I had someone send me a 6-month-old Reddit post about his frustrations with people saying everything is becoming woke. They sent this to me in response to my video about Synthetic Man. I'm guessing this person never saw my video about diversity, but that's fine. I'm happy to repeat things for the sake of clarity.
I'm starting to hate how people saying everything is becoming woke along with all these anti-woke YouTubers. A few months ago, I made post talking about why people think everything nowadays is becoming woke and how I don't like it. Like how many news articles or YouTube videos you've come across with headlines like woke Hollywood is being destroyed or modern gaming is being more woke than ever. Most of these come from YouTubers like Synthetic Man, Endymion TV, Griffin Gaming, Sile, Furtanga Plays, It's a Gundam, Revenant Remnant, Hypnotic, Heel vs Babyface, Yellow Flash 2, The Critical Drinker, Shadiversity, Maloney Mac Go Boom, among many others. People with these close-minded viewpoints and believe that media nowadays is promoting forced race swapping and forced diversity and that a strong female protagonist is insulting. It's insane. Like, go look up these guys on YouTube and tell me none of their videos are in any ways cynical and pessimistic.
So, in my diversity video, I showcased how we are outright being told that they are doing this. Various companies and institutions, I mean. They are subjecting us to social disciplines that acknowledge white guilt and non-white privileges. Kim Belair of Sweet Baby Inc., for example, had a video that received a fair amount of coverage following the drama surrounding that STEAM curator group, Sweet Baby Detected.
And suddenly, for the first time in my life, I got told that the stories that I was writing and the things that I was creating for and about people who resembled me were not real stories and they were not right stories. And this was to the point that I received a list that I'm sure many of you have received that was, here's a list of authors and stories that are legitimate. Here's a list of people and stories that are important. And as you can imagine, they were, mostly men and almost exclusively white. And so were the subjects of all of these stories, with a couple exceptions of people who were there to teach lessons to the white male characters, or people who were there to express pain, or people who were there to be the target of some kind of hate or conflict. And if we ever did read, here's a book by like an African-American author, here's a book by a woman, here's a book by a Japanese author, it was for a lesson that was about, this is what life is like as a woman, this is what pain and suffering is like as a black person, this is what pain and suffering is like as a Japanese person. And so through that, and kind of unconsciously, I started to learn that books by and about white men were literature.
Simply put, companies hire consultants or enact DEI as a discipline because modern education has led everyone to believe that the predominant culture is white, racist, and needs to be subverted and pushed aside for something new.
Because we've kind of created this normal that we all unconsciously follow, and it affects us even as we advocate for change. There are things and times, like back in the day, if you'd asked me, oh, are you doing this on purpose? Are you only telling stories that fit the dominant narrative? I would never have said yes. But I think that a lot of people end up doing it even as they're saying we have to do better. And I think that that's actually shown in the way that we manage representation, which we still consider it this like deviation from something that is normal.
This new normal is all based on identity politics. Black representation, female representation, gay representation, transgender representation. The way Kim Belair put it, seeing black people interacting in a video game is really, really nice, and made her experience what she calls a moment of joy.
We talk a lot about representation as the mitigation of pain, but we don't talk about representation as a creator of joy. Because I would genuinely love, just once, to be called into one of these consulting sessions, and instead of being asked like, hey, can you tell us how this is going to hurt people like you, just be asked, hey, what would you like to see people like you do in this game? What experiences can people like you bring to the world of the game that we haven't seen before? What's a cool thing that you want to see from characters who look and act like you? Because I think if we prioritize joy and start to frame representation as, a new form of innovation, rather than as pain avoidance and like surface level diversity, we're going to actually start to win a few more battles and generate moments of actual happiness. And for those of you who don't know, Jacob is a black man, he's a Marine, and he's your first kind of like point of contact. So, your first interaction with him, you're like crouching behind cover and you're having like a close quarters conversation. And when this happened in the game, it was this really powerful and remarkable moment for me, because it was two black characters talking one-on-one, and neither of them is cast as a criminal. They're not a sidekick, they're not a savage, they're not a stereotype, they're not a gang member. And they're the only two people on screen in this moment talking about something much greater than them. And it was just like really, really, really nice.
And that's the goal. You're watching a movie or playing a video game and you see some special identity group represented on screen, and this somehow ignites your endorphins. Now, the real reason this would stoke your endorphins is because we've all been told that this is morally validating. For example, when you see a black woman on screen doing brave and heroic things, you're supposed to have some kind of orgasmic experience, after which you pat yourself on the back for being so anti-bigoted, and therefore having been subjected to woke slop, you validate and assuage your white guilt. Guilt which can never really be overcome, mind you, but you can hold it at bay through penance. DEI is one such example of penance. Various companies having bent the knee to Black Lives Matter within the past 4 years is also an example of penance. Now, in peering at your list of supposedly anti-woke YouTubers here, I regret to inform you that many of these people are in fact woke themselves. And this is regardless of their having given into the appearance that they were fighting the power. Critical Drinker, for instance, praised HBO's The Last of Us.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were all very impressed, like, from that technical aspect of capturing the look and feel of the games, giving that mature, somber tone that you expected from the games. I think that aspect of it they really nailed, and I think probably episode 3 was an example of, hey, you know, there's ways you can deviate from the narrative of the games and still produce a good end product. You know, it's something that's emotionally satisfying and tells a really good story. You know, they, like you say, they extrapolated from it a little bit, and
yeah,
you know, it meant changing things around a little bit so that certain characters weren't around anymore when Joel and Ellie show up, but I think ultimately you got a pretty satisfying story out of that episode. So yeah, I very much came down on the side of really enjoying it. I think that was the most like emotionally invested I was in the show out of all 3 episodes so far. More so even than episode 1, which really surprised me, but I think it comes down to that combination of the writing. The acting's really good.
That's a positive affirmation for gay representation. It's a thumbs up for the wokesters. And remember, this episode was specifically pushed by Neil Druckmann as a means of cultural subversion.
The 3rd episode has a runtime of about 70 minutes. Somewhere around 55 of those are dedicated to Bill meeting Frank and then falling in love and living out a homosexual fantasy in the apocalypse. The two spend their days eating steak and drinking wine in Bill's compound as the world around them burns. Frank eventually gets cancer and is going to die, so he and Bill drink poison and commit together. Then Joel and Ellie find them dead inside their house. This time, Bill leaves a note saying that he never liked Joel, but even so, Joel could take his car. The episode is extremely off-putting. People fell in love with the original game because of its strong focus on the father-daughter dynamics of Joel and Ellie, not the dynamics of an antisocial homosexual who hated everyone except his boyfriend. It felt like an intentional and antagonistic bait and switch. Personally, I suspect Neil Druckmann took a lot of joy out of it. He posted a gif of Nick Offerman smiling deviously the night the episode aired and said, "Who thinks they're ready for tonight's episode?" And of course, HBO still included the scene where Ellie reveals she found Bill's gay magazine, which struck me as odd because the entire point of that scene was to imply that Bill was gay, which the show had already made quite explicit.
Bye-bye, dude. Bye-bye, dude.
It's an episode that has very little to do with anything else that occurs in the show. Neil Druckmann is also a man who comes from a country you're not supposed to mention on YouTube, because unlike the rest of us, these people are special, they're protected. That might be part of your frustration, in fact, feeling insulted by the continual mantra of this is woke and that is woke. Well, the reason folks like myself and others resort to even using the word woke over and over and over again is because there's currently no means of getting to the root of the problem without violating YouTube's terms of service. And if I were allowed to be as frank as I wanted to be on this platform, my channel would get hit for cyberbullying or hate hate speech. That is the problem with censorship in general. It forces us into a limited venue of speech, where we have found that saying woke all the time is the only means of communicating something with people without otherwise being given the hammer.
I even reached out to these people multiple times through comments in their videos and none of them have responded back to me.
Nobody is obligated to respond to you. Now, I do respond to people quite a lot on YouTube because I enjoy the engagement, but I also have a relatively small channel, so it's easier for me to interact with people given my pool of commenters is not so substantial. But for larger channels, I imagine that kind of interaction is far more difficult.
And if you know what I'm talking about, Synthetic Man believes that the Fallout TV show is bad because it promotes race mixing. Endymion TV thinks that modern society has been subjected to a woke mind virus. Griffin Gaming thinks that Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora is one of the worst games ever made. Worse than Skull Island, Rise of Kong, mind you, an actual bad game. And Shadiversity had a meltdown about the Barbie movie because he thinks it's, quote, female propaganda.
I won't speak for these other channels, I don't watch them. I am, however, familiar with Synthetic Man's review of the Fallout show, and I've clarified this before, but I can do so again.
And I find this even more funny because his kid is mixed race. So his black wife divorced him, and now he plays birthday parties. How black-pilling is that? And at the risk of getting a shit ton of dislikes from normies, just like my review of the first episode of The Last of Us, I find this even more funny because if you know anything about marriage statistics, you would know that white male, black female actually has the lowest divorce rates. So in a way, you could almost say this is anti-propaganda, but I still think it's promoting race mixing, as basically every show on television does. You know, for as woke as video games are these days, TV and movies blow the gaming industry out of the water. Basically, every streaming show I've tried to watch with my mother has had some form of propaganda in it, and usually multiple types, whether it's race-related, gender-related, LGBT-related, it's usually all of the above.
Synthetic Man's issue was that of miscegenation, not race mixing in general. If you actually took the time to listen to what he says here, you would know this. The problem with this current line of discourse is that the well has been thoroughly poisoned by people like Hassan Piker, Turkey Tom, and Moist Critical, among others.
The dude just sees like a black guy in a TV show and his blood fucking boils.
The nuance here that everyone seems to miss is that it is always white people who are being mixed with other races. It is a phenomenon that has also been seen on Google's search engine. Now, I've mentioned this on my streams before, but the only real problem with Synthetic Man's take here is that all this information about interracial divorce statistics is based on data from a study that was published 15 years ago. Otherwise, nobody should have a problem with anything he says. It's just the facts. If you really want to understand what the hubbub is about Synthetic Man, you just need to remember the wise words of Anita Sarkeesian.
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
This is a very simple playbook, and it has proven extremely effective in achieving an edge in all online discourse. So many people, strangely enough, find it appropriate to channel the ideals set down by Anita Sarkeesian here. And who can blame them when they've seen how effective those tactics have been? The way this works is that if I don't like what you have to say, I just call you a racist, and then you're supposed to supplicate yourself to me in response. And if you don't, you get canceled. And the funny thing to watch for here is when people who decry these cancel culture tactics inevitably use them when it becomes pragmatically expedient to do so.
Have you guys seen the all like the anti-woke guys talking about the Fallout show? How they were all really, they said it looked like, and now they're just like, this show is awesome, bro.
Yeah, there's only one guy that's sticking to his guns about the show is just woke propaganda, it's garbage, and it's the classic Synthetic Man. I don't know if you've seen his like Tears of the Kingdom review.
Oh yeah,
he's like the last holdout. And I decided to watch what he said about Fallout because I was curious. And one of the first things he mentions is propaganda about race mixing, and it was I was stunned.
What?
It was crazy. Yeah, one of his first complaints is that it's propaganda about race mixing in the beginning.
When?
Because the dad gets divorced and like the very first kid in the show, like I'm trying not to give spoilers, but like one of the kids of the guy is black and he's white. So he's talking about like, oh, it's race mixing and promoting race mixing.
But that's not even being woke.
In the case of Turkey Tom or Moist Critical decrying Synthetic Man, the objective is for them to chase clout. Oh, look how not racist I am by denouncing the real racists on YouTube. It is all self-congratulatory. It is masturbatory.
They also don't think grounded and realistic women are attractive, and they point to characters like Mary Jane Watson in Spider-Man 2 or Aloy in Horizon Forbidden West as being made ugly on purpose. That's just ridiculous. I'll say it right now. Nobody is trying to uglify women. Are these people mental? That's tinfoil hat wearing bullshit. There's no conspiracy going on.
So this is just self-reporting and why your comments wouldn't be worth responding to. You're completely reactionary. You haven't done any of your own research. The Mary Jane Watson in Spider-Man 2 looks nothing like she did in the first game. People have also noticed that she looks remarkably similar to one of the game's writers. And then Aloy in Horizon Forbidden West also looks nothing like the very real person that her face was based on. So if you're making determinations grounded in reality, the fact of the matter is the real thing looks prettier than the video game. Conclusion? They made her ugly on purpose. You can also look up a commercial by Dove USA, the soap company, campaigning for, quote, body positivity. That's proof in the pudding. They don't just make characters ugly incidentally. It's all done on purpose, and it's as in your face as it possibly can be.
Again, people like these have a very close-minded mentality where they want society to conform to their standards, like they want everything to be like the 1950s or something, or to bring back Jim Crow laws, and anything going against that destroys their idea of a perfect society. Whenever a game, or a TV show, or movie features a character of color, gays, transgendered, or a muscular female character, people are quick to calling it woke trash and instantly bad because of it.
This is all straw-manning, complete mischaracterization, and it is again why your comments do not deserve to be responded to. You don't want to have a conversation. You already have your mind made up. You want to fit people you dislike within a finite category. But the thing is, whether it be Synthetic Man or yours truly, we're not obliged to clear up your misconceptions about us. That's your problem. That's your disability.
I always believed that America is a melting pot where it is a different mix of races and cultures living together. Does anyone remember the song from Schoolhouse Rock, The Great American Melting Pot? But these people don't want America to be a mix of cultures and races, and instead want to revert it back to a pro-white dominated society. And women should be glorified eye candy, or they should stay in the kitchen instead of doing dirty jobs like maintenance, or high-paying jobs like working in finance, or being in the military, or all men to be stereotypical gruff, muscular, cynical tough guys.
No, the problem is the melting pot has decided white people, or more appropriately white culture, is anathema. What you say you were taught is not actually what you believe in. Anytime a black person pushes an agenda, you say, okay. Anytime a woman pushes an agenda, you say, okay. Anytime a gay person pushes an agenda, you say, okay. But then for some odd reason, when it's a white heterosexual male, you say, stop, bigot. That's why in very recent times, more and more people have begun to realize that all this diversity stuff, all this melting pot stuff, it's all code for anti-whiteness. And again, not just white as an ethnicity, but cultural values that are derived from Western Europe. More specifically, Christian values.
Look at the drama surrounding the Fable trailer or Assassin's Creed Shadows. I have said this before and I'll say it now. I don't believe that anything is woke. I think that word has become so bastardized that it has now become a racist slang. Now you can't seem to enjoy anything without someone saying something like, this thing has a black guy, woke. This one has a strong female protagonist, woke. Oh my god, there's two men kissing, terrible, woke. Pure garbage.
All you're doing here is self-reporting. You're doing the noticing now. Folks like Synthetic Man just had to give your third eye a love tap. And now there's really nothing left for you to do but acknowledge the truth or deny it. Alas, nobody is obligated to expunge your head from the hole you've dug. That's on you. And by the way, this wonderfully showcases actual legitimate bigotry. You see, rather than come up with any intellectual understanding of the thoughts and feelings of others, you've instead elected to write everyone off. That's NPC behavior. There are zero thoughts and feelings conveyed to me here that tell me anything other than you're a parrot for a mainstream narrative. And next year, you're just going to adopt whatever set of values you need to, regardless as to whether or not those are contrary to what you believe now.
These people live in a bubble, a toxic, cynical bubble, and it's sad to see. I thought that we as a species are supposed to accept each other through our differences. Instead, we are moving further and further away from becoming a united species. I just want to reach out to these people and grab them by the shoulders and tell them, hey, some of these things aren't even that bad, just let it go.
And now you've entered the paradox of tolerance, a paradox which can only really be understood if regarded as a social contract, not a moral standard. You're upset because you expect people to abide by the terms set down by a social contract that we never entered. Because of this, anyone who doesn't follow said social contract is not covered by it. In other words, in your eyes, their intolerance is not to be tolerated. You are a bigot's bigot. Your only standard is to condemn those with standards. And lastly, you wrote this entire thing and unironically ended it with some variation of, bro, why do you even care? Well, that is a complete and utter lack of self-awareness.